Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to jump directly into a tense family argument between a teenager, Ted, and his parents. Pay close attention to the sheer number of phrases they throw at each other.
How was your day at school today, Ted?
Bad. I had a chemistry test, and I blew it.
Maybe if you didn't cut class so often, you'd do better.
That's right, son. Stop slacking off and start hitting the books.
But I can't stand chemistry class. Besides, it's a lost cause. That class is way over my head.
You need to buckle down.
When I'm a famous musician, people won't give a hoot about my knowledge of atoms and molecules. That's beside the point.
We know you have your heart set on going to New York University.
And you don't stand a chance of getting in there with such poor grades.
So, did all of that go way over your head? If you were counting, that incredibly short, super dense family argument we just listened to was literally packed with everyday conversational phrases. 12 of them, to be exact. Now, if you're a beginner trying to process these phrases, sitting down and trying to memorize a dry list from a textbook, yeah, that's practically impossible. But hey, don't worry. I'm going to act as your friendly guide today, and we're going to use a brilliant, totally beginner-friendly decoding technique to lock every single one of those concepts into your brain permanently. To do this, we're going to build what's called a memory palace. This is a really powerful spatial memory technique, originally popularized by the memory expert Tony Buzan. It basically involves taking a highly familiar room or route and visualizing it vividly in your mind to easily store and recall complex information. So instead of just staring at flashcards, we're going to map Ted's chaotic day right onto a physical space. The rules to make this work are incredibly simple. It all comes down to 3 pillars: linking, association, and exaggeration. The absolute secret sauce here is that to make these phrases stick effortlessly, we have to make the mental images as absurd, loud, and exaggerated as humanly possible. Think about it. Boring, normal things are totally forgettable, right? But ridiculous things? Those are memorable. So let's create our very own mental classroom nightmare to remember this entire conversation. Okay, close your eyes for a second and imagine you're walking down a hallway, right up to a classroom. This is our first physical location, the doorway. To remember the phrase cut class, which means to skip school, I want you to visualize a giant student standing right in the doorway. But get this, he's holding a pair of comically large giant scissors, and he's literally cutting the door completely off its hinges, physically preventing anyone from going to class. Cut the door, cut class. See how that works? All right, let's step inside. We're moving to the next location to see how this built. Look at the desk, right in the front row. This is where we're going to learn the phrases, hit the books, and buckle down. Imagine a massive leather belt physically buckled tightly down over a huge stack of textbooks. And sitting right there, students are absurdly slamming and literally hitting their heads directly into those books to start studying. They are buckling down and hitting the books. Now pan your eyes over to the very front of the room, the chalkboard. Here we have lost cause and beside the point. Picture a highly frustrated teacher violently scrubbing the chalkboard, trying to erase a giant sign that screams lost cause. But it's permanently stuck. Totally defeated, he turns to the class, points a finger right next to the sign, and shouts in exasperation that their argument is entirely beside the point. Next, glance up. What's on the ceiling? We're using this location to help you remember the phrase over my head, which means something is far too difficult to understand. Just imagine glowing chemistry atoms literally floating up near the ceiling, way out of reach, hovering right over your head. You jump for them, but they're airy and impossible to grab. Bring your focus back down to the front of the room. Notice the teacher's podium. This represents Ted saying he blew it on his test. Visualize a student standing directly at the podium, turning on a giant industrial fan and literally blowing up his test, violently scattering the graded papers absolutely everywhere. Look down right next to that podium, the trash can. Our phrase here is not give a hoot. Imagine someone marching right up to the trash can and aggressively throwing a giant hooting owl directly into the garbage simply because they don't give a hoot about school anymore. Pretty bizarre, right? But that's exactly why you'll remember it. Over on the side wall, we have the classroom map. This space holds 2 phrases, have your heart set on and stand a chance. Hanging on the wall is a map of New York University, but it features a giant, glowing, beating red heart securely set right in the center of it.
A student down below is desperately trying to climb toward it, but he has no ladder. Standing there on the ground, he realizes he simply doesn't stand a chance of reaching it. Finally, we complete our mental walk at the exit door. To remember the phrase can't stand, visualize a super frustrated student who is literally standing precariously on top of the glowing red exit sign, pulling their hair out and screaming at the top of their lungs that they just can't stand it anymore.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer incredible power of spatial memory. By simply taking a mental walk through this recap of 8 distinct locations in a room and picturing those highly exaggerated, totally ridiculous images, you've effortlessly linked and mapped 12 complex phrases. From the floating atoms on the ceiling to that giant owl in the trash can, your brain naturally holds onto the 3D space and the bizarre story far better than it ever could memorize a static, flat vocabulary list. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. The human brain is just incredible. You have hundreds of familiar rooms, childhood homes, streets, and office buildings already perfectly stored in your memory right now, just waiting to be used. You now literally hold the key to limitless recall. So, which empty room in your own mind will you use to master your next challenge?